Now, since I'm pretty small time in the grand scheme of things, I didn't think making a general video about Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 would be all that useful. And I'm sure Game Explained would show everything I said was wrong within an hour. So I thought about everything I could do that nobody else would talk about, because no one else cares. And the thing that came to my mind after watching the trailer for the new Breath of the Wild sequel was that it seemed like a pretty big risk. Now, I know that generally making a sequel to something is very unrisky, especially when it's something as unanimously acclaimed and that sold as incredibly well as Breath of the Wild did. And there's no doubt in my mind that this game will sell very well too. And it's a Zelda game, so obviously it's going to be good regardless. But I think in terms of fan reception, this game will either be a huge hit or a pretty big miss. Everyone cares about all my video topics. That's why I get all the views. Hello all 1,661 of you, I'm Redkwan, and this is why I think Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 is pretty risky. Seriously, do you not have anything better to do? I don't even care about this. So like I said, it's not really risky in the traditional sense. I think Breath of the Wild 2 will still sell very well, and I think it'll still be well received critically, but I think this game could either be the next Majora's Mask or the next Skyward Sword. It's either going to be a classic, or people are going to rip on it for the rest of time. I'm going to tell you why I think that in just a minute, but first I need to go through the generic and uninteresting My Personal Thoughts section. It's a very exciting section, everyone loves it. Now people are obviously going to be very excited for this, and I'm excited too. I think this game, no matter what, is still going to be a lot of fun. Now, Breath of the Wild actually wasn't one of my favorite Zelda games. I didn't think the story was very good, the shrines and divine beasts were dumpy excuses for dungeons and puzzle stuff, and I didn't care that much for the art style. I like the Twilight Princess art style, okay? Is that what you wanted to hear? I still thought it was pretty good though, but it wasn't my type of Zelda game at all. Now, you might think that a Breath of the Wild sequel would have all of those same problems, and it will of course carry a lot over, but based on what happened with Majora's Mask and how this trailer looks, I think this game might be very different from Breath of the Wild in some notable ways. Firstly, like Majora's Mask, it seems to be taking a darker tone, which I think is pretty cool, and from the looks of it, this game is focusing a lot more on story and a lot less on the world. That might be wrong, that's just the impression I'm getting. Look at any Breath of the Wild trailers, and at least half of the time will be spent focusing on the world. This trailer only has it for a few seconds at the end, and it seems like it's only really there to demonstrate what's happening story-wise. Okay, well that wraps up the My Thoughts section. It's very exciting, everyone loves it. Now here's why this might be a bit of a gamble. From the looks of it, this game will use a very similar world to Breath of the Wild's. I don't know the Breath of the Wild world all that well, so I'm not sure if it's basically the exact same world, because like I said, it wasn't really my type of Zelda. I beat it in like 30 hours and didn't come back that much, okay? Is that what you wanted to hear? If it's the exact same world though, I think that's a pretty bad idea. If it's just a similar world, I still think it's a pretty bad idea too. It's true that people love the world in Breath of the Wild, and it would make sense that a sequel with presumably the same characters and location would take place in the same world. But the thing is, will people really be all that excited to jump into the Breath of the Wild world again? Sure, they'll change up the locations a little bit, and there'll be new quests and people to see, but it looks like it's going to be pretty close to the same area, and with a game this focused on the world, I don't know if it'll really feel all that different. Breath of the Wild is, to a large extent, the world of Breath of the Wild. So will a Breath of the Wild 2 with the same world and art style feel that much like a new game at all? I don't really think it would, to be honest. Will the runes return? I bet some probably would too. If they do, then what's really differentiating this game from a gameplay standpoint? It's a little hard for me to find anything. Now I think the fact that the world and gameplay are likely to be so close to the world and gameplay of the original Breath of the Wild is a big risk. But I think that something that could be even riskier is the stuff they do change. And I know every new Zelda game changes a lot of stuff up, but with a sequel you have to find a balance with it. Are you going to change up too much and ruin what made the original great, misusing the gameplay mechanics for the sake of something new? Or are you going to make something so similar to the first one that it almost doesn't feel like it needs to exist at all? And with this game, it seems like they could potentially run into both problems. Obviously, the world and gameplay mechanics could end up being too similar, but at the same time, if it's a much darker game with more linearity and a greater story focus, which the trailer would appear to show, why even make it a sequel in the first place? Will it all feel wrong? If they're going for something a little more linear, why have the giant world from the first game anyway? Maybe I'm just a pessimist, but I think this thing could either be a fantastic Zelda or a really confused Zelda, and I really can't tell you right now which of those will be more accurate. I don't think reusing the Breath of the Wild world is a very good idea, at least unless they have some crazy new way to utilize it, but everything else seems like it could go either way at this point. Again, I'm sure GameXplain will have shut me down on this already, but Zelda is featured pretty prominently in this trailer, so you know, maybe we'll play as both Link and Zelda. Sounds pretty far-fetched, but that would also be risky, so I'm throwing it in this video anyway. Two-player? Two-player? You know you want it. So Breath of the Wild 2. It's very exciting that it's happening, the trailer was pretty darn cool, and hey, I'll take another mainline Zelda game in 5 years instead of 6. Honestly though, you have to imagine this thing is still a long ways out. So that's a bit of a bummer. And well, I think it will sell well and be critically acclaimed regardless, because it's a Breath of the Wild sequel for the Nintendo Switch. I still think it has the potential to be a pretty big letdown for fans if they don't pull it off well. Like, by Zelda standards. IGN will still give it a 10, I'm sure, but between it probably having a similar world and gameplay mechanics, while also being darker, more story-focused, and potentially more linear, I think it has the potential to feel too similar, too weird and different, or feel like a strange combination of the two. A sequel to one of Nintendo's most successful games of all time feels like an incredibly safe bet, and in some ways it is, but I also feel like it has the potential to really mess up. Well, I'm Redkwan. Don't you love pessimism? Everyone's super excited for a sequel to Breath of the Wild, and I have to talk about how I think it might be weird and disappointing. I'm pretty cool like that. So how do you feel about Breath of the Wild 2? How do you feel about Nintendo's E3? How do you feel about unsubscribing? Wait, why did I put that one in? Don't get any ideas, please. I have nothing else going for me. Anyways, I'm Redkwan, thank you all for watching, and I'll hopefully see you all later. Goodbye.